Welcome to Connecting Dots, conversations led by curiosity. Let's dive in. First of all,
Yeah.
how's the golf game? That's the most important question, is how the golf game is.
Awful, non-existent. I have played. So we've
New
talked.
new new baby problems.
Yeah, new baby problems. I think I've played 54 holes this year. Situations where it's like it's this late in the year too. I'm almost like I don't even know if I'm really even gonna. I'm not really driven to play much more. It's not there, but it's. I think I could take a year off.
Yeah.
It'd be fine.
Yeah. And you got a good reason to do so. Yeah, I thought I would start with that because I know that's something you and I've talked about quite a bit. One of the things that I think is really interesting is, and I can't remember if we've discussed this or not, but I'm curious to hear from you, like going back to a moment in time, whether it was elementary school, high school, college, professional life. Like, was there a moment in time that like cybersecurity became like the thing that's like, that's what I want to do? I'd be really curious to hear, like, when you think back, like, was there a moment in time where it's like that light bulb went off?
No, I think there's a couple decisions that led to me being in cybersecurity and running a business. And first one was in college. It was like I went to IU and it was like, am I going to get into the Kelly School of Business?
Yeah.
Probably not. And if I do, I'm going to be the very bottom of the barrel in terms of academics, right? So I was like, well, I'll just go computer science. Like I love tech, I love computer science like that. I always knew in a way entrepreneurship kind of has run in my family. And so I always kind of knew I want to do something like on my own. So I went computer science and I figured I'd back into the business side of things. I'd start tech and I'd like use my more natural like people skills and stuff like that that are the soft skills and stuff like that that I would learn the hard skills and then be able to just kind of back into the other stuff. So that was number one. And then I got a job right out of school doing develop or an internship right before senior year doing development work for companies' intranet sites, specifically built around like SharePoint and stuff like that. I didn't enjoy it a ton. And I got a return offer to come back, and I said, I was like, okay, I'm going to hold on to this offer. Like, just, I don't want to worry about anything my senior year of college. It's like, great, I'll get there, then I'll figure it out from there. So I come back, I get in like 2 weeks into my full-time job, and I went to go to my boss, and I was like, this is not the realm of things I want to do. And the company I went to work for is a global consulting firm, and they've got tons of different disciplines that you can get into. So I always kind of knew there could be like a horizontal there. Asked me what I was into, and I was just like, oh, security sounds cool. Like that was it. And they put me in the penetration testing security lab. And I think what ended up being kind of helpful was my passion for working with people, solving problems, having conversations and stuff like that ended up being a real fit for me in that lab because there wasn't a ton of people that wanted to do that kind of thing. So I got to, most people want to do pen testing and they want to do the technical stuff, but they didn't want to go travel to the client sites. They didn't want to have report readout meetings. They didn't want to worry about the finance, the budgets, the staffing needs and stuff like
Yep.
that, and the sales calls and stuff like that. So I got to kind of move into that type of role fairly early. Got to travel the world. I got to do pen testing for companies all over the world and stuff like that. And while all this was going on, I realized how awesome my job was and all the stuff I got to do. But I was still like talking with buddies about starting like a Donato's franchise. Like I was like, yeah, this isn't like where I'm going to be long term or anything like that. Like I enjoyed it, but I also thought it was one of those things that it was like
Like a
I
means to an end.
I like solving problems. Like I like the business side of things of solving problems and doing difficult things. And um, this just happened to be a very complex problem that I happened to learn. So yeah, that was kind of where I got and then started the business after 5 or 6 years of working at that global consulting firm. I moved to Indianapolis and helped with a cybersecurity boot camp, which was fun and interesting. You got to kind of learn how people think about these things, and then I quickly went off on my own and just started the company. So
What I don't think I knew that. So it's an interesting story. What led to the decision to go out on your own?
the city of Chicago was probably the first thing. So I lived in Chicago, and I've racked up a record number of parking tickets and stuff like that in that time because I traveled a lot. So
Yeah.
like they have these signs, like anyone that lives in Chicago or has lived in Chicago knows they have these orange signs that they hang up on the posts. And it's like every other week, every week they have them coming.
Construction, whatever's going on. Yeah.
And they're supposed to post them like 48 hours in advance or something like that. And like, but like sometimes you leave for a trip and they hang up the sign and then they clean and then you're so it
Yeah.
just
And then
I
they,
racked up a ton, right? And that wasn't like it wasn't the parking tickets that did it for me. It was just kind of like I loved Chicago. I loved the food there. I met my wife there, everything. But I was ready to kind of move to where I kind of envisioned home to be, where I knew more people and stuff like that. And company didn't really have a presence. I don't think there was really going to be a huge opportunity for me to continue to grow by being remote at the time, right? So this is 2018, 2019. My value was really kind of being in that office. With my team and stuff like that. So I was just kind of like, I think I could probably figure this out. I managed to figure out like, all the finances and the others and the staffing and the scoping and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is something I'd like to go try to do on my own. I never knew what it was gonna like what it would turn into or anything like that. I was just kind of a glorified subcontractor for larger consulting firms and kind of flipped that up and built our own book.
I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people have, those thoughts, whether it's they've, from the beginning or worked in, corporate America for 10, 20 years, they have that thought of like, I want to go out on my own. It's a story I hear all the time, but it's not easy. So like when you look back on making that jump, like what would you tell someone who's maybe thinking about like doing the same thing, maybe in a different industry
Yeah.
or in the same industry, but like what's something you would tell someone that's like, hey, I've been working for XYZ company for this long and like I want to go be my own boss.
I think there's like it's like a combination of you have to be humble and arrogant at the same time, right? You have to like know like and you have to just you hear this thing a lot like you got to burn the boats. I would say the first thing that like crossed my mind was like, okay, I have a W-2 job. The W-2 job that I got in India is like, I get a W-2, make sure you have a W-2 job that pays for everything, make sure you have a house, make sure you're figuring out. I was lucky too. So like I bought a house and I had three of my best friends living with me. So they were basically paying the mortgage for that. So setting yourself up in ways early on to understand that you're going to have some financial hardship and difficulty. It's not going to go as well as you think it is necessarily right away. Um, and if it does, you will hit some sort of plateau or decline. And then and I had experience with that as well. I would say like, yeah, making sure you have your ducks in a row, making sure your expenses are as little as possible.
Yeah.
But then like the key there is like, you just have to be able to tell yourself every single day, I need to go make money for like, you can't rely on anyone besides yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and that's been the coolest to me, honestly, that's like my I grew up very lucky. I had parents that would not let me go without anything, right? Like it was awesome. And so it was really kind of the no one is coming to help you with this stuff, right? Like you do get to a point where you get off on your own and you have employees and stuff like that where you look back and you say like even if I wanted help from someone like that, like our operation is big enough now that like I couldn't turn to someone and just be like, "Hey, I need help with this" or something like that. Like I know my business better than anyone,
Yeah.
and that will be the case. You will know, like if you start your own thing, you will know your business better than anyone. You'll go to people for advice, and they will have similar experiences, but no one is going to know intimately like what your problem is and
Yeah.
how to solve that problem.
Yeah. It's funny you use the term burning the boats. I don't know where that came from, but it's something that Matthew, our founder, he's used that term before. Um, at what point when you look back, did you know you were going to make it?
Still haven't. Well, no, it's one of those things where you're like, early on in the company, I felt very it went rather well, right? I had COVID was my first year. So 2020 was like our first, like we were off on our own kind of at that point in time.
Yeah.
Um, and COVID hit. And it was like, so like think like March timeframe, just started my own company. Everything got really slow for a couple of weeks, then everything sped up because everyone's like, we gotta push security to. So this is what honestly is what pushed us to kind of doing well in our earlier years was people wanted to understand what their remote footprint looked like and whether it was secure or not.
Yep.
And so we had a really good couple of years and stuff like that. We started hiring people and all these things. Then you sit there and you're like, wait a minute, like, okay, now we've got to think about strategically about hiring people and like, are they going to be here for the long run? Are they um instead of just hiring someone that could do the work, it's like, is this someone that we want to work with? Is this
Yep.
every day? My view on our on Hoplite and on Shield Cyber is not a um, lifestyle business, right? Like there's some people that have lifestyle business and they're like, yeah, I want to make, good money doing this thing and I want to be my own boss. My view on this is to build something really cool.
Yep.
And so that requires constant investment and constant risk.
Yep.
And so, in terms of like making it, it's like, well, we put ourselves kind of on the line in the investments that we're making every day to grow with the envision of I always had this idea in my head too of like, okay, yeah, in like 3 years, I'm gonna be like in such a comfortable position that like we're all good. But my view, I also look at it and say, like, well, if I asked myself that 3 years ago, I would have thought the same thing. And based on how the company is doing, I should feel that way. But due to consistent investment and consistent risk and putting ourselves on line every day, I think it's going to be a constant thing until you get to a point of like it's a really good question. I think if I thought that in my head, like, oh, we've made it or whatever, then I have a lifeboat. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
And my view is to never have, we don't want to have lifeboats.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. You brought up something which was kind of goes in the direction that I was going to take it. And you mentioned like starting a business during the pandemic or launching the business during the pandemic and the impact of like remote work on cybersecurity. The question I was going to ask is if you go back for me 20 years, organizations had an internet service provider, they had a phone system, and they had a bunch of servers in a basement in their building, right?
Yep.
Just to simplify it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really the infrastructure that they had in place. And one thing that I'm curious about, and that I just would love your perspective, and I think the whole remote thing, I think, is a part of this, but the obvious explosion of technologies over the past 20 years, right?
Mhm.
So now companies might be using 30, 40, 50 different vendors
Yeah.
for various things, whether it's CRM, digital marketing, like cloud, and then you have obviously the migration of on-premise to the cloud. So like I think back, back in the day, the world of cybersecurity was probably a lot simpler for many reasons. But now that you have hundreds of vendors being used by a company, you
Yeah.
have, and you brought it up, remote workers added to that mix, migration to the cloud in terms of a lot of these technologies. Like when you think about how that's changed the landscape, like what's your perspective on that explosion of technology and all of the different moving pieces when it comes to your industry?
Yeah, so it has changed a lot. So my first year doing pen testing was 2015. In some ways it's changed a lot, in some ways it's very similar. My team still uses techniques that I used in 2015, right?
Yep.
That people have not fixed or remediated, right? And that could be a number of reasons. The pen testing provider they've used in the past just is not qualified to be doing these things. It could be bad configurations they haven't been assessed. Like a lot of the techniques and things like that that we find are not things that an automated tool finds, and that's a misconception. Um, People think that oh, we have a Nessus scanner or we have a Qualys or we have this or that automated tool that looks for vulnerabilities. Those things don't really have the full context of what like a real qualified penetration tester or someone like that has. So long story short is what I've noticed is we've seen an explosion in new technology, but we also have the legacy technology that doesn't go anywhere. And that's usually because those were capitalized expenses, right? So maybe it's a data center, maybe it's servers in a closet, it's things like that like the team's like, well, like we don't have to shut down this on-prem data center or anything like that. It's good to have kind of in place. It's already been kind of paid for, but
Right.
appreciating it. And then you have, oh, we're moving this stuff into the cloud as well. And so a lot of them have this hybrid type of model, which is very hard to secure. You've got Internet of Things. You've got, I was talking to someone the other day about their HVAC provider, just plugging in things to any random port, trying to find something, some power over Ethernet capability.
Yep.
And that stuff does happen, right? And so the while it is while the attackers have gotten a lot more sophisticated,
Mm-hmm.
the defense has gotten sophisticated, but also fragmented at the same time.
Yep.
So there's this view in cybersecurity of like, how do we create this single pane of glass for everything? And then like latest news on that is like Palo Alto just bought CyberArk. So right, they bought a
Yep.
privileged access management tool. And there's a lot of conversations going on about like, oh, what was the strategy behind that? Like that was a bad investment. Palo should stay with endpoint. They should stay with network, things like
Yep.
that. But what they're trying to do is how do you create that single pane of glass? And I think they're one of the people that are most the organizations that's most like trying to do that. I don't know how possible that is. And the reason for that is people in cybersecurity move so often too, and they have their tools that they like to use.
Yep.
It is so disparate. Like you've got like for Palo to invest in like an IoT security tool or something like that, how far and wide does everything spread? Long story of saying that like we've gotten a lot better from a defense perspective. The attackers have gotten better.
Yep.
But they've just gotten a lot more complex. And it's just kind of security is just trying to keep up with everyone enabling and creating these new technologies and these new abilities.
One of my questions was going to be about are are the people trying to do bad things getting better, or are we falling behind, or both? And it sounds like everyone's moving in that same direction, right? Like they're getting more sophisticated, but the defenses are getting more sophisticated, and it's just a race. Is that fair?
Well, kind of, and I also have opinions on that. A lot of the attacks that you're seeing, that you hear about, the ransomwares, the um, business email compromise, the things like that, like those happen as a direct correlation of lack of controls by the company, right?
Yep.
And it's the same things people were doing 10 years ago. So
Yep.
like ransomware is preventable. And it's ransomware happens when now how the malicious file or whatever you want to call it, the malware gets on the computer varies. Could be from someone clicking on something, could be from a missing patch, it could be from something pivoting from another machine. But ultimately, what has to happen is when you get on a machine, when that malware gets on a machine, it tries to propagate. That's how ransomware works, right? And computers talk to each other from only a few different protocols, right? And so the way that that almost all ransomwares propagate is through an Active Directory or a directory services type of 99% of the time it's Active Directory. And so if you have your Active Directory configured properly, it's very difficult for that thing to mass propagate across the board. So what it's doing is it's on that computer, it's trying to dump credentials. So pull down credentials, and then it's trying those credentials against a ton of different machines. It's trying to get an admin session on a different machine, put it on that machine, put it on that machine. So,
Yep.
and this is the same. So WannaCry issue that happened in 2017, which was like, it was a big deal. It was a widespread ransomware campaign across, and it specifically affected a lot of hospitals.
Mhm.
So MS-1710 is the vulnerability that was used. Eternal Blue is the exploit that was used for that. What was happening is they were on the machine. It was dumping, it was getting credentials, and it was moving around. And that was really the first like major one that happened. And then all these other groups and stuff like that have kind of copycatted that and used similar code, like snippets of that code and stuff like that to create their own. A lot of the problem is a lot of people spend so much time spending money on reactive forces, right? Their SOC and their EDR and which are all very, very important. The sharpen the axe metaphor here, where it's like, if I'm going to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend 99% of my time sharpening the axe. So it's
Yep.
like, in that situation, it's like, I'm going to spend a lot more time proactively trying to secure things. The things
Yep.
that I know I can't secure, right? Those are called risk exceptions, or we're going to accept that risk. And those
Yep.
are things you could put in extra controls or look even closer at. And the reactive security is super important, but I just think that people think that if they buy a sock, that they're just like, okay, we're good. And they don't think anything about like specific things that they have to fix.
And I don't know if these are the right terminology, but the one of the questions I was going to ask you is I think it was the MGM breach a couple years ago. And I don't know if that's like what they would call like a social engineering breach versus maybe like a technical breach.
Yep.
So I mean, the simple question is like, is cybersecurity a technical problem or like a business and people problem? I think I know the answer that it's both, right?
Yeah.
So like, what's your perspective on like the balance of whether it's proactive or reactive, like the tech focus versus the people focus, right? Because
Yeah.
MGM thing, right? Wasn't that like someone literally just like called into HR and try, they just pretended to be someone. What that wasn't a on this on the front end to me that wasn't a sophisticated technical approach. Obviously they figured out what to do once they got that. But like I'm curious and I've talked with you about this like companies are looking at like how do they build a fortress and make sure that things are safe from a technical standpoint, but isn't there a human element to it as well that you have to have both? Is that a fair point?
Yes. Quick comment on before we move to that is the whole we were breached by sophisticated actors, sophisticated threat actors, or whatever it is that everyone uses when they do get breached is most of the time it's not a sophisticated attack. So
Yeah,
like those things are like you bring up a really good point there. That's like someone just called and they got access. Usually when a hack happens, it's them logging in. Like they
yeah,
get credentials
yeah,
from some way or another, whether it's the dark web, whether it's calling, whether it's email,
yeah,
and then they kind of log in and they kind of move around. It's a combination of all of them. You'll hear the cliche of it's a combination of people, processes, and technology.
yeah,
Um, my view on this is if things are configured the right way, technologically, not like I'm not saying buy tools. Like
right,
tools are important. They do help, but all tools help you ingest a lot more data more efficiently. You can get the data without having a tool. There's usually
yeah,
a ton of proprietary stuff behind those. I mean, there is, but like they have to be getting the data from somewhere.
yeah,
And so my whole thought is if things are configured the right way, you need to assume that your users are going to click on something or that they're going to give credentials away. And this is where the whole idea of zero trust came from. It's been way overhyped and overused,
right,
and misused a lot as well. But like the whole idea of zero trust is like if someone is able to get credentials from one of your employees or something like that, it should not mean the end of your business, right? It
right,
should not mean you're going to experience some widespread attack.
yeah,
Zero trust doesn't necessarily mean a tool of zero trust. It just means your system is configured in a way that doesn't just give people total free reign inside your environment.
yeah.
And so when we advise organizations, both through hacking, through like just general consulting and stuff like that, is assume that those things are going to happen, and we help them. Like this is how you should fix things. This is how you should have stuff configured at its core, uh,
Hmm.
in order for your tools to be able to do what they need to, as a secondary. But
Yeah.
the environment should be configured in a way that um, that's not just going to allow free reign to the environment if someone does click on an email when they inevitably do.
I think this is a rabbit hole, but I think I would be remiss if I didn't address the whole AI topic.
Mhm.
Um, part of my background was spent in the AI space. I think that a lot of companies and organizations and business leaders kind of dipped their toes in different AI technologies. Um, I think there's been a little bit of backtracking on that to a certain extent. But I think it's because of security concerns. So this isn't necessarily like a hoplite or shield question necessarily, more of just like a Teddy question. Um, what's your view on just the world of AI and how that applies to the world of security?
Yeah, I think so. It crosses my mind all day, every day,
Yeah,
right? It's like for a number of reasons. One, what can we do to stay ahead? Like what are the things, how can we leverage it to create a total competitive advantage from our end? And then two, like how can we secure our clients from things that they could do poorly there? Right. And I think AI is not, I think AI is a lot more than just generative AI chatbots and stuff like
totally,
that, right?
totally.
Um, there's going to be a lot of missteps early on. Same thing with cloud, right? From a security perspective, when people started
Yep.
enabling cloud resources in like the late 2010s, 2015, 16, 17, 18, like it was there were S3 buckets out. There was just all sorts of keys that were just widely available. Um, and then we eventually figured it out. So we're going to see a lot of companies misstep, but those are going to be kind of required for us to get to that point of organizations being more mature to where you're using these things from a secure manner. Power in AI is the data, right? So what are you giving it access to? We've seen a lot of organizations. We're working on something right now where someone is they had their own LLM and they were like internally and they gave it access to everything. It was Copilot. It wasn't like their own.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah,
and they gave them their COO like had gave like accidentally gave like everyone access. So
yep.
they could just query for people's salaries. They could query for, confidential information that the executive team was working on. It was a big company.
Wow.
I think right now it has a lot to do with because the technology like really isn't there to detect and help organizations that you have to build really good processes around it and who's doing what with it. People that say like, oh, we've got this whole AI thing, the AI security stuff down, or like we haven't seen all the potentially things that could go wrong. We're still finding new flaws in Active Directory, right? So like when
Right.
directory services was a thing starting in 2000, like we're still finding new flaws and gaps there. So we're going to continue to find new things, but the next handful of years, I think we're going to find 80% of those big problems because we are actually looking for them.
Well, that was going to be my next question is like, what's the biggest challenge companies are going to face in the next 5 years when it comes to security?
Sprawl, definitely, right? Additional devices and things like that as asset management, which has always been a problem. Like data security is going to be a major thing with the AI boom. And what we're giving these AI like data is more widely available now than ever. So
Yep.
like um, we see people that are connecting um, their Outlook accounts to OpenAI to ChatGPT, and they're giving it free reign to read any file that user has access to.
Yep.
So like and that's a tactical that's a specific issue that like
Yeah.
is a problem, but like organizations need to be able to limit how people are connecting enterprise apps um, to their Office 365 accounts and stuff like that because if that's the COO, like we talked about before, and he's connecting it because it makes him more efficient and easier to drag and drop things into there, that's now in the universe.
Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier with like the explosion of technologies. Use the term sprawl. I think that's a better
Mhm.
way to look at it because that's really what I was thinking is everyone had, whether it's, this we're carrying around all day, but all of the different apps that are on there, all of the different things that are now connected and intertwined, it's like it's impossible to keep track of all of those things.
Yeah.
Um, and
Do you know how many Apple devices you have?
me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
uh, four.
Yeah. Well, like it's like one of those things where it's like
And I don't know what's connected. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but like, I don't know. You've got a Google account, you've got all these different accounts, and like,
yeah.
it's funny. I was actually at the eye doctor yesterday, and my eye doctor was asking me about this. He's like,
Mhm.
he knows what I do, and he's like, what do I do with? I've got all my passwords in a Google sheet, and I was like, well, that's probably not the best. But he was asking me, he's like, what do I do to protect like my information? And that's just a consumer level
Yeah.
concern, right? But it's like, and the reason I asked the AI thing is I've heard about, and you mentioned it, it's like organizations are giving their employees whether it's a device or access to an open AI or what have you. And it's like you have no idea what's connected to what, and a pop-up comes up on your computer and it's read write access to XYZ. People just click on that. They're not
Yeah.
paying any attention. And so that's kind of what I was thinking when I was just the explosion of technology in general. I don't know how people keep up with it. And it sounds like from your perspective, that's one of the biggest concerns moving forward is that's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as security folks, though, the worst thing that we can do is say, don't let your employees use these things,
Right.
right?
Right.
The business needs to enable itself to be able to do whatever it needs to do.
Yep.
And I read something on, someone wrote this on LinkedIn the other day. I loved it. And it was like, it is security's job to react to those things and like, and continue to enable the business to do those things that they need to do securely.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, be lying if we said like, oh yeah, like we don't allow that in our organization. It's like, no, if we could be more efficient and we can do more things, we can impact and help more clients and
Yeah.
um we're gonna do those things.
Yeah.
And so and I think all organizations should do that. I just think it is one of those things that we have to just be diligent about what we're giving these third party tools access to.
Yeah. I was before we kind of wrap up, one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, what's the worst case scenario in the next 5 to 10 years? But I think that could go down kind of a deep, dark path. I guess I'm curious to ask you, like, we hear about like if you Google data breaches over the last 5 years, there's a million of them. Like
Mhm.
there's some we know about and some we don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's your perspective? Like, are people kind of immune to it? It's kind of like the world that we live in. It's like, there was a data breach. It's like it happens, and then you remediate, you do whatever you need to do. Like, are we just desensitized to it, or is this something that like is there like a doomsday? Not to go down that path, but
Yeah.
is there like a doomsday scenario? And I'll share with you why. Like one of the thoughts I always have, which is kind of dark. It's like you know a state level like cybersecurity attack on core infrastructure at a countrywide level. Like those are the types of things that
Yeah.
I think people, at least I think about. I'm like, what happens if, and I think one happened recently with like oil pipelines where like it on the East
Colonial.
Coast, something like
Yep.
that. So like maybe just a minute or two on like what you see is like what is the worst case scenario, or kind of what scares you,
Hmm.
and the flip side of that is like what are you most excited about over the next 5 or 10 years, whether it's from a cybersecurity standpoint or just being a CEO.
So I think, I mean, your point of critical infrastructure is a major thing. And I haven't done the research into the the funding and some of that, right? A lot of people in cyber, especially in the big organizations, are lobbying for more money so that they can secure these things and stuff. And we've done work with pipelines and stuff like that. And that's as much as I'll say about that. But I will say across the board, working with the number of organizations that we work with and the general lack of security controls that
Yep.
are not in place is somewhat shocking. And so like what I always try to tell people is like, please just let's get back to the basics. Like, let's not try to build out an entire application security program before we even know what applications we have.
Yeah.
Or let's not like let let's not go do this pen test until like we've done vulnerability scan and we fixed like very basic things that need to be done. As sprawling as tech is getting, like if
Yeah.
you just break it back down to like the NIST standards that are created to be pretty malleable across the board when new things get spun up and stuff like that. So the same core principles still align. It's
Hmm.
just more how do we prevent ourselves from getting way overworked and excited about the next shiny thing that's a tool that does AI and that does these things? To actually answer your question about like worst case scenario, I would say, yeah, right. Something that impacts human life, right? So, organization gets breached. Obviously, yes, that's bad, but it's a, manufacturing plant and they come back up in, a couple of days or something like that, or no one's
Right.
actually lives are hurt in the
Right.
in the plant, then, there's ways that we can fix those things. We can't fix human life after it. So that's a major thing, hospitals, critical infrastructure and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that the other things don't matter, because those other things are also pivot points into those
Yep.
critical infrastructure points. Think about the number of vendors and stuff like that that have access to those things.
Yeah.
So that would be a major thing. What am I most excited about? I mean, personally, I'm really excited about the stuff that we're doing, right? We've created like a new 5-year plan, right? That we're working on to drive forward and grow, and still like internal conversations only, but it's like something that we're going to start acting upon, towards the end of this year
Yep.
for our growth and stuff like that. So that's exciting. I'm excited to see what AI enables us to do, what people are able to create without the tremendous amount of resources that are required to start a company. You keep hearing about like who's going to create the first $1 billion solopreneur. I don't know, like, really if that's possible, because everything is so much more achievable now. So therefore, it's very difficult to differentiate. So I think it's very difficult for someone to have a moat to create their own kind of $1 billion solopreneur company.
Yeah.
But I am excited to see like the creative ways that I've always been kind of against like big marketing side of cyber. Cyber is driven by marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of these large organizations are not necessarily the most qualified or the best tools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they are driven by some reason. They have a really good message and it just works really, really well. And so I'm excited to see how more satellite, smaller type organizations of people that actually truly understand the problem and can solve those things can kind of take on those larger players and prove to people that when it comes down to it, are you being more secure, or do you feel better about buying that big player because it de-risks you and your position in your company?
Well, it's funny. I think about my biggest takeaway from this conversation is like, you know, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban built their legacies and their dynasties on the basics, right?
Mhm.
And like that to me, and I've talked with you about this before, but I think that's like the biggest thing I'll take away is like it often comes back down to the blocking and tackling
Yeah.
and not the shiny object, to your point. Obviously, there's modern technologies and what have you. Um, but it's funny you talking about like you're still solving for things that you were solving for in 2015. Like
Yeah.
that's a testament that there are, you got to focus on the basics first. So um, that's kind of my biggest takeaway. I really appreciate you taking some time to talk through this. I love learning from you about what's going on in the industry. So yeah, I appreciate you taking
Yeah.
time to talk through it. And yeah, I'll let you go with that.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Let's get out and play a little golf here before
Get
the year's over.
get you from 50. We'll get you from 54 to 72 holes
That'd be great.
on
That'd
the.
be great.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
You too. Thanks, Tony.